this video, we are going to print this pattern in greater than or equal to 6 ways, basic to advanced. So the method 1, let's call it M1, we are going to use the most basic one, 2 loops, one for the rows, and basically we will be using 3 loops, one for the rows and the 2 inner loops will be for the spaces and for printing the numbers. Okay, so for j in range, we will be putting the values afterwards. Inside it we are going to use a print statement here. For k in range, inside it also we are going to use a print statement. So now in the outer loop we have 5 rows, so the values will be going from 1 to 6 not inclusive, that is I will be going from 1 to 5. Okay, and inner loop we have 4 spaces in the first iteration, then they are decreasing to 0. So from 4 to 0, it means they will be going from 5 to I comma minus 1. The value of I in the first iteration is 1, so 1 is not inclusive in the first inner loop. It means j will be going from 5 to 2, that is 4 times this loop will be run. And as we are decreasing the values, so we have used this minus 1 here. And inside the range of second inner loop, we are going to put here I comma 0 comma minus 1. What does that mean? In the first iteration, I is equal to 1 and this value is not inclusive, that is 0. So the loop will run from 1 to 1. It means only a single time, and we are decreasing the values, that's why we have used minus 1 here. And inside the print statement of first inner loop, we are going to use spaces, 2 spaces, okay, because we want space in between these 2 numbers. That's why we have used 2 spaces. You will understand it in a little while, just a minute. And multiply it with, type a comma and equals, in the single quotes nothing. This will make sure that after printing the spaces, the next inner loop prints the numbers in the same line when I is equal to some value. Now in the second inner loop print statement, you're going to print k comma and equals, in the single quotes type a space. So in here when I is equal to 1, the inner loop will run only a single time for k is equal to 1 only, and 1 will be printed after printing these many spaces. If you don't want space between these 2 numbers in every numbers, then you have to remove this space and decrease this space to a single space only. Okay, but we want the space between the numbers, so that's why we have used and is equal to single quotes, a space in between them. Now type a print statement here which makes sure that after running these 2 loops, we have the next iteration of the outer loop from the new line. Now execute it, and here you can see that we have the required pattern, right? This one. We can also generalize it. Let's generalize it now. Place of 6 n plus 1, place of 5 n, and execute it. We have the same pattern. Let's make n is equal to 7, and here you can see the same required pattern, isn't it? Let's get back to the default one. Okay, so now in the method 2, let's call it M2, we are going to reduce the number of inner loops here, single outer loop and 1 single inner loop. Let's make it happen. For I in range, the outer loop, and the inner loop for j in range. So in the outer loop, as usual, as we did earlier, 1 to 6 not inclusive. Let's make an if statement here first. We will be putting the range values later on, just a minute. Inside the if statements, if I is greater than equal to j, this is the condition, but we want j first, so j values will be going from 5 to 0, and as we are decreasing the values, so we use a minus 1 here as the step size. Okay, so the outer loop will run 5 times, and in each iteration of the outer loop, the inner loop must execute 5 times for each column, that is 1 time for each column, a total of 5 times. Okay, so that's why we have run this loop, the inner one, from 5 to 0 not inclusive, that is 5 to 1. I mean the inner loop run 5 times. Okay, 5 to 1, 5 4 3 2 1, that is 5 values, so inner loop will execute 5 times. And here in the condition, let's first write it. Inside it we are going to use a print statement which will print the values of j and equals inside the single quotes a space else statement, and here we are going to print spaces. Alright, and out of this loop we are going to use a new line print statement. So let's understand the conditions of if and else. When I is equal to 1, the j will be going from 5 to 1. 0 is not inclusive. So from 5 to 2, this condition is false. So these many spaces will be printed. It means 4 times 2 spaces will be printed. Like 1, 2, 3 and 4 times 2 spaces will be printed. And after this, we want 1 to be printed, which is checked by this condition. So when j is equal to 1, I was 1, so 1 is greater than or equal to 1, that is true condition, and then this print statement executes and we will be having j printed here, that is 1. And now in the next iteration we have this print statement which makes sure that we have starting from the next line. Now when I is equal to 2, the inner loop will go again 5 times. Up to 3 you will be having this condition false, and we will be having 3 times 2 spaces printed, like here 1, 2 and 3. 3 times 2 spaces printed. Then when j is equal to 2, 2 is greater than or equal to 2, condition is true, so 2 will be printed. Now when j is equal to 1 in the next iteration, I was 2, so 2 is greater than or equal to 1, condition is true, so 1 will be printed. And this loop exits and the next iteration will start from the next line, this one, okay, and so on. So let's execute it now, and here you can see the required pattern. If you want to generalize it, you can do it right here. In the place of 6, n plus 1, in place of 5, put n. Execute it so it works. Let's make sure it works for 7 also and any other value, okay, so it works for all values. Let's get to the default one, and now we are going to reduce the number of lines here. We will be having 2 loops, but many of these lines will be reduced. Okay, so let's call it method third. I'm going to use a for loop, same one, 1 to 6 not inclusive. First we are going to use a print statement here, then the inner loop will be used for printing the numbers, and the print statement inside the inner loop will be used for printing the numbers. Okay, so in this print statement we are going to print the spaces, and which are multiplied with 5 minus I, comma end equals single quotes nothing in that, to make sure the numbers are printed in the same line where the spaces are. Okay, so what this 5 minus I means, when I is equal to 1, that is in the first row, spaces will be printed how many times? 5 minus 1, that is 4 times. So 4 times spaces will be printed right here up to this. Okay, and after that we have to print 1, and you can see the numbers are changing, right? They are not the same in every row. So we are going to print j here inside it, but what are the values of j? So to get the values of j, we are going to use I comma 0 comma minus 1. What is I? In the first iteration it is 1, so 1 will be printed. In the second iteration I is equal to 2, so the inner loop will go from 2 to 0 to not inclusive, that is 2 to 1, 2 and 1, so 2 and 1 will be printed. But what this statement does is, this prints in the next line. So to get rid of the next line printing the numbers, we use end equals single quotes and inside them nothing. And as we have used end equals here, so to start from the next line in the next iteration of the outer loop, we have to use a print statement here, and let's execute it now. We don't have spaces in between the numbers, so we put a space here, and here you can see the required pattern. If you want to generalize it, you can do it right away without any kind of problems. The same we are doing from the past 2 methods. Isn't it? It's awesome. Yeah, 4 and 7, it works great. So let's get back to the default one. Now in the method 4, we are going to further reduce the number of loops and the number of lines too, if possible. But for sure we are going to reduce the number of loops here. we are going to use a string here. Inside the quotes, what we can do is either use this one, or you can even use s is equal to the opposite of this, so as to make it easy while printing this pattern. I will show you the both methods, this one, opposite one, and this one, ascending and descending, to print both numbers in this pattern. This is easy, this is a bit difficult, but we are going to tackle out both of them. So here we are going to use enumerate function for I comma j in enumerate over the string s, and use a print statement here. We are going to use two print statements, one for printing the spaces and the other for printing the numbers. Okay, I is the index of the string s, that is, it is starting from 0 to 1 less than the number of elements. That is, we have 5 elements, so the values of I will go from 0 to 4, and j is the value at that ith index. Okay, so at 0 the value of j is 1, at I is equal to 4, the value of j is 5. So we are going to print spaces here and multiply it with 4 minus I. Put a comma here and equals, inside the single quotes, nothing. 4 minus I. In the first iteration we want 4 spaces, so when I is equal to 0 in the first iteration, 4 minus 0 is 4, so these many spaces will be printed 4 times. And now inside the second print statement of the loop, we are going to use star s in the square brackets I colon colon minus 1. Star s is used to print all the elements by slicing. So how does slicing works in this case is I is equal to 0 in the first case. Okay, this is the last element, or last element if we are incrementing, I mean using +1 here or nothing here. You can use it like this also if you want, I mean like this, I colon and this one. If we use this one, it means that in the first iteration I is equal to 0, and it will go from 0 to the last element. If we are not providing the index, it means the last element if we are going like this, but we are going backwards because we have a -1 as the step size, like this one. We were going backwards in the previous examples also. So here it will go from 0th index to the first element, because we are going backwards from 0th index to backward, like this one. Okay, it will print 1 here, and in the next iteration when I is equal to 1, it will go from 1 to backwards until it reaches the starting of the string. That's the right thing. Okay, now you understand it. So it will go from 1th index element to the starting element here. So it will print, first of all 2 will be printed with a space, then 1. So this way it works. Okay, so let's execute it now, and here you can see the required pattern. Great, awesome. This one is very easy. Let me show you, just make it method 5. So we have a total of 7 methods to print this pattern. S equals 5 4 3 2 1 in the single quotes. Okay, and we are using enumerate function here over the string s. Use the same print statements, but the difference will be in the slicing here. With a space, multiply it with 4 minus I, comma, and equals, inside the single quotes, nothing. And here we have to check the condition very carefully. Here we have to put 4 minus I to the last element, and with an step size of -1. Let's execute it now. This is somewhat different. We didn't expected that. So here it goes like this, and execute it. You can have the required pattern. So what we did here is we just got the last element from here, that is I is equal to 0 in the first case, 4 minus 0, that is 4th index, that is the last element. Okay, the last element is 1, so only 1 will be printed up to the last element, that is 1. In the next iteration I is equal to 1, so it gets 3. 4 minus 1 is equal to 3. What is the third index element? That is 2. and it will print up to the last element because we haven't provided anything here. It means the last. Here it meant the first element because we have used -1 as the step size and we were traveling backward. Here we are traveling in the forward direction. Okay, so this you have to understand very carefully, these two. It will print 2 to the last element, that is 1, and so on. So now we have successfully understood these forward and backward traveling of the string using slicing, alright, and enumerate function also. Now we are going to further reduce these number of lines and loops if possible, but we will surely be not using this string as to enumerate, okay, because to generalize these twos we have to write the elements in the string, but we can generalize it also. If we are putting 6 7 here, we have to put the number 1 less than the number of elements, that is 6 here, because we have 7 elements, and execute it, and here you can see it worked. The same we can do with this one. Like if we want to make it from 7 6, we put in place of 4 the number of elements in the string s minus 1. 7 minus 1 is 6. Same goes here, and we can print it. Let's get back to the default one. Now in the method 6, we are going to use a while loop here for I is equal to 1 while I is less than 6. Inside it we are going to use a print statement, and inside the print statement, first of all we need spaces here, and that be multiplied with 5 minus I, put a comma, and equals inside the single quotes nothing. So this will make sure that we have the required number of spaces. When I is equal to 1, 5 minus 1, that is 4. Spaces will be printed 4 times. That's it for the spaces. Now we want to print the numbers, and for that we are going to use star range, and inside it we are going to give the values from I, 0, minus 1 as the step size. So let's first increment the value of I by 1, and let me make you understand this one. Star range, it is similar like star s, okay. It is going to print the range of elements from I to 0 not inclusive. So when I is equal to 1, it will go from 1 to 0 not inclusive, that is 1 to 1. It means it will be ranging from 1 to 1 only a single time, and 1 will be printed. I becomes 2 in the next iteration. 5 minus 2, 3. Spaces will be printed 3 times, and then while executing this, it will be going from 2 to 0 not inclusive, that is 2 to 1. It means 2 and 1. So 2 and 1 will be printed. Star range makes sure that we have range of elements with the spaces in between them. Alright, and let's execute it now, and here you can see that we have the required pattern. What if we want to generalize it? N is equal to 5 in place of 6, n plus 1 in place of 5, n, and execute it. The same required pattern. Let's increment the value of n, and let's see if it is working. So it is working right there. Okay, let's get back to the default one. And now in the method 7, what we are going to do is a very easy method. We will just copy these two statements from here, because the method 7 is just a conversion of while loop into the for loop, so as to decrease the number of lines. Inside range as usual 1 to 6 for executing it 5 times. The same goes here, and execute it. Here you can see the same required pattern. If you want to generalize it, you can do so, but just replacing a couple of things, not many. Works, increase the value of n, and here it works for any value. Okay, let's get back to the default one. So now we have a total of 7 methods to print this pattern from these many lines and 3 loops to just how many? 3 lines if you don't want generalizes, or you want to put the values directly here, okay, and a single loop. So we have improved a lot by decreasing the program size and increasing the efficiency. There's a lot more content to come on PyProTricks, so please subscribe and subscribe Boost Obsession for tech videos. That's it for now.
Thank you for watching. Now it's time to discover more. Simply click on the screen to subscribe to our channel and Watch another video to discover more.